My brother sat across from me and said I owed him $150,000. And when I said no, my parents told me I was selfish and no longer family. But while they were planning their future with my money, he had already been moving things behind my back, using my credit, setting up accounts in my name, thinking I would never notice. What he did not expect was that every transaction left a trail. And once it crossed the line into fraud, it was no longer just family drama. It became federal. And the morning they showed up at his door was quiet. No warning, just a knock that ended everything. Charges filed, assets frozen, and a future that now leads somewhere very different. Because this was never about money. This was about revenge. And my name is not the one they thought they could control. Chapter 1. The day my own brother told me I owed him $150,000. Something in me cracked before I had time to understand what he was saying. We were in my parents' living room in Austin, Texas, the same room where every holiday dinner and forced family moment had played out for years. Nothing looked different, but everything felt wrong. Ryan stood across from me like he was delivering a decision, not starting a conversation. He did not ask. He just said it. You owe me $150,000. I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself. It was automatic, like my brain rejected the sentence before I could process it. But no one else reacted, no one even shifted. That was the first moment I knew this was not a misunderstanding. My father, David, leaned forward slightly, hands folded, his voice calm in that familiar way that meant he had already made his mind. Your brother is trying to do something good for his family. This is where you step in. My mother, Marilyn, stayed quiet, staring at the table like there was something there worth focusing on. She always did that when she agreed, but did not want to say it out loud. Ryan kept talking, filling in details I had not asked for. He found a house in a good neighborhood, strong schools, safe streets, everything that made him sound responsible just by saying it. He said he needed the down payment, and after that, everything would settle. The way he said it was what stuck with me. Not hopeful, not uncertain, certain, like the outcome was already decided, and I was just catching up. I told him that was my savings. I said it slowly, trying to stay steady. That money was not extra. It was years of working late, taking on extra contracts, saying no to things other people said yes to. Ryan did not let me finish. It's just money, Eloin. Family matters more. That word hit differently. Family. Not a request, a correction. My father nodded like that settled it. You do not have kids. You're not carrying the same weight. This is where family supports each other. Something shifted in me then, quiet but clear. They were not asking me for help. They were assigning a role I never agreed to. I looked at my mother, waiting for something that felt like support. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. I said I needed time to think. It was the safest thing I could say. Ryan shook his head right away. There's nothing to think about. The room felt tighter after that, the air heavier. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, louder than it should have been. Then my father said something that changed everything. He said this is not just about the down payment. He paused just long enough for it to land. We need you on the loan, too. I blinked, thinking I heard him wrong. What do you mean? He explained it like it was routine, like it was paperwork, said having me as a cosigner would help approval, lower the rate, make everything easier. Simple, practical. I felt my stomach drop. That was not help. That was tying my entire financial future to something I didn't choose. I said I wasn't comfortable with that. Ryan exhaled like I was making things harder than they needed to be. You can afford it anyway, so why are you acting like this is a problem? There it was, not just assumption, control. I felt it clearly then. This was not a conversation, this was a plan. They had already decided, and I was the last step. They didn't ask me, they didn't check with me, they didn't think I would say no. I looked around the room again. My father was watching me, waiting for me to agree. My mother still wouldn't look at me. Ryan looked impatient, like I was delaying something that was already supposed to happen. I tried to steady myself. I told them, I'm not signing anything. Clear, simple, no. The silence after that felt heavier than anything before. Ryan's expression changed first. Not shock, annoyance, like I made a simple situation complicated. My father leaned back, jaw tight. My mother finally looked at me, but there was no relief in her eyes, just disappointment. And that's when it hit me completely. If this was what family looked like, why did it feel like I was being cornered instead of supported? Why did it feel like I was the only one in that room who still believed I had a choice? I sat there, surrounded by people who were supposed to care about me, and I realized I had never felt more alone in my life. Because in that moment, I understood something worse than losing money. I was the only one in that room who had already decided I didn't matter. And for the first time, I stopped wondering how to fix it for them. I started wondering what would happen if I chose myself instead. I walked out without looking back, but the silence behind me felt louder than anything they had said. No one came after me. That told me more than the argument ever could. By the time I got to my car, my phone was already lighting up. I did not check it right away. I just sat there for a second, hands on the wheel, trying to slow my breathing. My chest still felt tight, like I had just stepped out of something I did not fully understand yet. When I finally picked up the phone, Ryan's name filled the screen. I let it ring. Then the messages started. "You are really going to act like this over money?" I stared at it, thumb hovering, but I did not respond. Another message came through. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." I let out a small breath, set the phone down in the cup holder, and started the engine. The drive home felt off. Not long, not short, just quiet in a way that made everything replay whether I wanted it to or not. His voice kept coming back, not just what he said, but the certainty behind it, like my answer had never really mattered. When I got inside my apartment, the air felt still, safe but different somehow, like I was seeing it from the outside for the first time. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, your brother is under a lot of pressure right now. You need to understand that." I read it twice. Understand what? That pressure gave him permission? Another buzz. "Dad, call me." I did not. Instead, I dropped my bag by the door and walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. My hands were steady, but my thoughts were not. Something about the way they all reacted felt off. Not surprised, not confused, just annoyed that I had said no, like I had stepped out of a role I was supposed to play. That thought stuck with me. I moved to the table, opened my laptop, and pulled up my accounts. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at first. Maybe I just needed something concrete, something that made sense. Checking looked fine, savings too. I almost closed it. Then I remembered an older credit card, one I barely used anymore. I clicked into it. The list of transactions loaded slowly, and at first it didn't register. Gas, groceries, a few online purchases, nothing that immediately screamed wrong. Then I looked closer. None of them were mine. I scrolled. The balance sat there like it had been waiting for me to notice. $7,423. My stomach dropped. I went line by line, slower this time. Dates, amounts, locations. It stretched back months. Months. I clicked into the account details. There was an authorized user listed. Ryan. For a second, I just stared at his name. I had added him years ago, back when helping him felt small, temporary, harmless. Back when I thought access meant trust. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring. "What is wrong with you?" No hello, no pause. I looked at the screen again. "Did you use my card?" A beat of silence, then a sigh like I was the one making things difficult. "You weren't using it." That was his answer. "You charged over $7,000. You have the money." That hit differently. Not defensive, not apologetic, just certain that it was his to use. That's not the point. You told me you would help me if I needed it. I never said you could just take it." He let out a short laugh. "You're acting like I stole from you." The words sat between us. "Did you?" Another pause. Then his tone shifted, sharper now. "It's family. It's not like I'm some stranger." There it was again. Family. not as connection, as justification. How long? A while. That was all he said. A while. I closed my eyes for a second, letting that sink in. You've been doing this for months and didn't think to tell me? I was going to. When? Silence again. That was my answer. Then he said something that landed harder than anything else. You don't even have kids. What are you saving all that money for? I felt it in my chest, sharp and immediate, like everything I had built for myself had just been reduced to something unnecessary, like my life only mattered if it looked like his. I opened my eyes. That's not your decision to make. You're being selfish. There it was again. Selfish. Anytime I didn't give, anytime I didn't bend. I looked back at the transactions on my screen, at the pattern I had missed. It wasn't help. It was being taken advantage of, slowly, quietly, until it felt normal. I ended the call. The silence in my apartment felt different now, clearer. I sat there for a minute, just looking at his name attached to something that was supposed to be mine, and something in me shifted. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as someone I needed to protect. I went into the account settings and removed him. It took less than a minute, a few clicks. Confirm, done. I stared at the confirmation longer than I expected to. It felt small, but it wasn't. Because for once, I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't asking for permission. I was just choosing. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Ryan. I let it ring. Then again and again. A message came through. Did you just remove me? Another one. What is wrong with you? I set the phone face down on the table. Nothing was wrong with me. That was what they couldn't stand. I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting back to the screen. $7,423. Months of it, right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it. Not because it was hidden, because I never thought I needed to look. I sat there longer than I realized, replaying everything, not just today, but all the small moments that led here, the assumptions, the expectations, the way every yes had quietly turned into something they thought they owned. This was not one decision, it was a pattern, and the more I looked at it, the more I realized this was only the part I could see. Chapter 3. The Pattern I Should Have Seen Sooner. I did not sit still after that. I moved like something had finally clicked into place. I called the bank again, went through every step they suggested, flagged the account, confirmed the disputes, asked questions I should have asked a long time ago. My voice stayed calm, but my mind was running ahead of me, trying to connect things I had ignored. When the call ended, I did not stop there. I went through everything. Every account, every password, every setting I had not looked at in years. I changed all of it. Emails, banking, subscriptions, anything tied to my name. It felt less like organizing and more like locking doors I had left open without realizing it. And the more I locked down, the more something else started to surface. This was not just about one cart. It was about how easy it had been. I sat back for a second and stared at my screen. How long had this been happening? Not just the charges, the pattern. I picked up my phone and called Jason. He answered quickly. Hey, everything okay? I need you to be honest with me. A pause. Yeah, of course. Has Ryan ever asked you for money? Another pause. Longer this time. Yeah, a few times. Did he pay you back? Jason let out a breath. Not really. Why? I swallowed. Because he has been using my credit card without telling me. Silence. Wait, what? Over $7,000. Months of it. He swore under his breath. I should have told you. What do you mean? He tried to get me to co-sign something last year, said it was temporary. I said no, and he got weird about it. Weird. That word barely covered it. He kept saying families should trust each other. There it was again. The same line, the same expectation. Thanks for telling me. Are you okay? I don't know yet. I ended the call and stared at nothing for a moment. Then I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. What's going on? I need to ask you something. Did Ryan ever borrow money from you? Marcus let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, more than once. Did he pay you back? No. That answer came fast. Why are you asking now? I exhaled slowly. Because he's been taking money from me without asking. Marcus went quiet. Damn. Yeah, I thought it was just me. That landed harder than I expected. Just you? Yeah, he always had a story, something urgent, something that made you feel like you couldn't say no. I closed my eyes for a second. It was never temporary. No, it was not. We sat in silence for a moment before I ended the call. The pieces were not scattered anymore. They were lining up. This was not new. I had just been the last one to see it. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Linda. I answered. Hey. Her voice was softer than usual, but steady. I heard what happened. Of course, she had. I'm handling it. She was quiet for a moment. No, you're starting to handle it. I did not argue. This is not just Ryan. You know that, right? I think I do now. It's the whole system, the way everyone expects you to be the one who gives. That didn't start today. Her words settled in slowly. It had been built over time. And no one stopped it. Not until you did. I looked down at my hands. I should have seen it sooner. Maybe, but you see it now. That's what matters. I let out a quiet breath. Be careful. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Why? Because when you stop playing your role, people push back, sometimes harder than you expect. I thought about the calls, the messages, the way everything escalated the moment I said no. I've already seen that. Then take this seriously. I will. We hung up. For a second, everything felt still again. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. Credit monitoring alert. I frowned and opened it. A soft inquiry had been made on my credit report. I stared at the name of the lender. I'd never heard of it. I hadn't applied for anything. My chest tightened. I logged into my credit account and checked the details. The date was today. The time was recent. Too recent. Something felt wrong in a way that was different from before. Colder, more precise. I called the bank again. I just got a credit alert for an inquiry I didn't authorize. The representative pulled up my file. Let me take a look. A few seconds passed. Yes, I see it. There's also a pending loan application under your name. My grip tightened around the phone. What kind of loan? A personal loan. I felt my heartbeat pick up. I didn't apply for any loan. I understand. The application includes your name and social security number, but the contact information is different. Different how? The phone number and email don't match what we have on file. For a second, everything went quiet. Can you stop it? We can flag it as fraudulent and halt the process. I recommend placing a fraud alert and freezing your credit. Do it. Right away. I closed my eyes as she worked, the reality settling in. This was not just someone crossing a line. This was someone stepping into my life like it belonged to them. He didn't just take my money, he stepped into my identity like it belonged to him. When the call ended, I didn't move right away. I just sat there, letting it sink in. This was not a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional, and it was bigger than I had let myself believe. I looked back at everything I had just locked down, every account, every setting. If he could do this once, what else had he already done that I hadn't caught yet? That thought stayed with me, heavy, unsettling. I opened my eyes and looked around my apartment, at the quiet space I had built, the life that had always felt stable. And suddenly, it didn't feel as secure as it used to. This was not just fraud. It was betrayal built on years of trust I never questioned. That's the part that made it worse. Not the money, not even the risk, the fact that I never thought I needed to protect myself from him. I sat there for a long time, letting that reality settle in. This was not one moment. It was a pattern, and patterns don't stop on their own. They keep going until something breaks them. I did not try to explain myself after that. That was the first thing that changed. No long messages, no back and forth, no trying to make them see something they had already decided to ignore. I just moved forward. The next morning, I called the credit bureau and locked everything down. Fraud alert, credit freeze, full monitoring. I went through each account again, slower this time, making sure nothing had been missed. Banking, cards, subscriptions, anything tied to my name. I cut off every access point I could find. Each step felt steady, not rushed, not emotional, controlled. My phone kept buzzing on the table. Ryan, Mom, Dad, over and over. I watched it light up and did nothing. At first, it felt wrong, like I was avoiding something I should deal with. Then it shifted. Silence was not avoidance, it was control. The messages started stacking up. You need to answer me. What did you do? Why is my loan on hold? I paused on that one, then set the phone back down. A minute later, it rang again. Ryan. I let it ring out. Then a message. What did you tell them? Another. They're saying fraud. What did you do? I leaned back in my chair, letting the questions sit unanswered. I had not done anything to him. I had just stopped covering for him. That was enough. The phone rang again. This time I picked up. What is going on? He said immediately. His voice sounded different, less sure, more tight. You need to fix this. I stayed quiet for a second. My loan got flagged. They're asking questions. They said there's a fraud alert on your account. I let the silence stretch just a little longer. That is not my problem. A pause. What do you mean it's not your problem? It means you should not have used my information. His breathing changed, sharper now. I didn't do anything wrong. I looked out the window, my reflection faint in the glass. You opened a loan under my name. I was going to tell you. That line again. Always later, always after. You don't get to decide that anymore. Silence. Then anger rushed back in. This is happening because you wouldn't help me. If you had just said yes, none of this would have happened. I let that sit for a second. It sounded so simple when he said it, so clean, like cause and effect. No, I said quietly, this is happening because you crossed a line. You're overreacting. I'm done explaining. The words came out calm, not forced, not rehearsed, just true. He kept talking, faster now, trying to pull me back into something I had already stepped out of. I ended the call, and I did not answer again. The messages kept coming, some angry, some confused, some pretending nothing had happened. I answered none of them. Silence held, and the more I stayed in it, the more it felt like something I had been missing for years. Not distance, not space, control. This was not revenge the way they expected. This was me taking back control. On my last night, I stood in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by boxes and empty space. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like something had finally been cleared. I picked up my phone one last time and looked at the screen. Missed calls, unread messages, all the things that used to pull me back in. Then I turned it off. The next morning, I left Austin before sunrise. No goodbyes, no final conversations, just a quiet exit. As the city faded behind me, I felt it settle. Not anger, not relief, something steadier. And for the first time, it stayed that way. The year did not arrive all at once. It settled in quietly, in the way my life had started to feel steady without asking for permission. Berlin became something I did not have to survive. I woke up, went to work, came home, and nothing in my day tried to take more than I was willing to give. My job paid better, but more than that, it respected my time. Evenings were quiet in a way that felt earned, not empty. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. That alone told me how much had changed. I did not look for news about my family. I did not need to. When something breaks, the sound travels. The first update came through someone who still knew both sides. Ryan lost his job. That was all the message said. I read it once and set my phone down, not because I was shocked, but because I was not. It made sense in a way that did not require explanation. A few weeks later, more details came through. There had been an internal review, financial inconsistencies, questions that did not have clean answers. Once those questions started, they did not stop. His name was no longer just attached to a mistake, it was attached to a pattern. That follows you. The loan situation did not recover either. Once it was flagged, it stayed that way. Applications denied, records marked, the kind of mark that doesn't disappear just because you ask it to. The house he had been so certain about never happened. Then came the part that felt familiar. My parents tried to fix it. They used what they had saved for themselves, thinking they could hold everything together long enough for things to settle. It did not work. The numbers did not bend. The situation did not reset. All it did was stretch the damage further. Trying to save something that was already collapsing only pulled more down with it. I did not feel satisfaction hearing any of it, but I also did not feel pulled back in. That was the difference. At some point, Megan left. I did not get the full story. I did not ask for it. People leave when the weight becomes too much to carry for someone else. That part never surprises me anymore. The messages started after that. The first one came late at night. I need to talk to you. I looked at the screen for a few seconds, then locked my phone. Another message came not long after. Please just answer. I did not. The next morning, there were more. Things got worse. I would not be reaching out if it was not serious. I read that one twice. A year ago, that sentence would have been enough to bring me back into it. I would have asked questions, tried to understand, tried to help. Now it sounded like something I had already lived through, something I had already stepped away from. Later that day, my mother reached out. We need to talk as a family. I sat there for a moment, letting that sentence settle. It used to mean something. It used to pull me in before I had time to think. Now it just sounded like a script I had heard too many times. I did not answer her either. A few days passed, then another message from Ryan. If you had helped me when I asked, none of this would have happened. I read it slowly. Not because it confused me, but because I wanted to be sure I felt nothing about it. And I did not. No anger, no guilt, no urge to defend myself, just clarity. He was still looking for someone to hold responsible. It just wasn't going to be me anymore. I picked up my phone, thought about responding, then set it back down. There was nothing I could say that would change anything. And more importantly, nothing I needed to say. That evening, I walked home later than usual. The city was still awake, lights reflecting off the pavement, people moving past me without knowing anything about my life. It felt right, not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was pulling at me from behind. I had spent so long thinking that walking away would feel like loss. It did not. It felt like space. Back in my apartment, I sat by the window and looked out over the street below. I thought about everything that had happened, not in detail, not trying to replay it, just acknowledging it. I did not destroy them. I did not expose them. I did not need to. I stopped holding things together for them, and without that, everything followed its own path. My phone buzzed again on the table. I did not reach for it right away. When I finally did, I did not open the message. I already knew what it would say. Another request, another version of the same cycle. I turned the screen off and set the phone back down. This time, I did not think about it after. That was new too. I used to believe that saying no would come with a cost I couldn't afford, that it would make me the kind of person who turns away when it matters. But the truth was simpler than that. I was never turning away from them. I was finally choosing not to abandon myself. If you've ever been treated like something people can use instead of someone they need to respect, then you understand how hard it is to see that clearly and how different everything feels once you do. Saying no did not ruin anything. It just stopped me from being the thing that kept everything else running. I picked up my phone one last time and turned it off completely. The room was quiet again. Not empty, not waiting, just mine. And if you've ever had to choose between being the one who keeps saving everyone or the one who finally steps back, you already know there's only one choice that lets you keep your life. For the first time, I made it, and I did not look back. If this story meant something to you, stay with me, share your thoughts below, and follow along for more stories that might feel a little closer to your own.